Today we've got a great revenge story involving the use of a train air horn. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, no vacation for you. I worked as an assistant manager at a corporate gas station, and they would use me as acting manager for other stores if theirs were sick or on vacation. My manager was leaving, and I was used to cover the store when she left, knowing I was most likely finally getting promoted to manager at my own store. And so happy, I'd worked so hard to move up in the 4 years I was there, and I knew how to do everything and had great walk the store ratings. After 2 weeks of hearing nothing, they throw this guy in my store and make him manager. He knows nothing, and we find out he's boinking one of the HR ladies at corporate and needed a job. Working with him is misery. He makes me do everything he doesn't want but needs to learn how to do, and is a complete jerk about it. A few months of this go by, and we get our quarterly rating, and it's 20 points below my store's usual average. He blamed it 100% on me and told me that if it continues, he's going to fire me, which I laughed at. Corporate hires and fires managers, even assistants. And I told him he has no authority to do so and to take it up with them because my store never scored so low until he showed up. He decided he didn't like my truthful outburst and told me he needed to leave early and get ready for his weekend in Cape Cod, and that I needed to do the huge order for the store before I left today. It was a Friday, in a vain attempt to punish me. I smiled and told him sure. I did the order. I did it completely and perfectly. Then I went into the office, typed up a resignation letter, and left it on the desk. When he stopped in Saturday morning expecting an already made deposit to take to the bank and saw my letter instead, he called me and asked if I really wasn't coming in this weekend, if I was serious about quitting and not giving 2 weeks. I laughed and hung up. He had to cancel his weekend trip and instead spent it working and putting away the order he made me do Friday. Great productive worker, always did their job, never let anything slouch that was within their control, all ruined yet again by another dopey manager. I think this revenge really feels great except for the fact that OP spent the first half of it building up how they were happy here, they worked and were moving up in this company, and then they felt they had to quit. HMS Slarty Bartfarst commented, "Once again someone quitting because of the manager, not the job. I do hope you've made sure corporate knows why you quit." OP responded to that saying, "I'd already talked to them about him and got absolutely nowhere. Like I said, he was banging someone in HR." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, my coworker was a butt to me, so I parked in her unofficial spot. Quick backstory, my coworker came to work in a bad mood, and I'm somewhat new at my job. We all drive vans assigned to us at work and park them technically wherever, but we all have our unofficial spots we park in every day. Since I'm the newest, I park the furthest away down a hill. A mechanic was dropping off a new car and I couldn't figure out the best place to park it, so I asked, where should he park the car? And my coworker said, wherever he wants to freaking park it. I said okay and just walk away. End of shift. I get back before she does and park my work van in her unofficial spot. Because we park wherever we want to freaking park, I guess. All of a sudden, your questions are gonna matter so much more to that person. Can't wait to be clarified on where to park anywhere except that one spot that's mine and mine alone. Jones and for Jonesy commented, she's going to burn about that one. We all know how territorial people get about their spots. Blake the Snake commented, I used to work mornings and was among the first to arrive at our building. I had my spot that had shade from a tree during the heat of the day. I recently switched to second shift and was irritated to find someone parked in my spot at 2 p.m. The nerve of some people. Our next story is, let me tell you something before you go. I spent almost 50 years in between a conflict between my mom and her sister. Aunt was your typical holy roller who believed her poop didn't stink because she went to church every week. She had the typically holier-than-thou attitude about everything. She put on an I'm such a wonderful person appearance to everyone. But at home, she was wicked to my mom. My mom's great sin was abandoning her family to enlist in the military. Her sister never forgave her for forming her own life and spent the rest of her life making my mom feel like trash. My mom was a very passive person, so she never dared stand up for herself. I was 5 at the time when Aunt came to town, and even at that age, I quickly saw how nasty she was to my mom. I watched my mom cower around her, so logically I feared her too. She took offense to my fear and did what any rational adult would do in that situation. She decided to get even with a 5-year-old and turned her wrath on me. Some of it was petty, like buying my siblings expensive gifts and I would get a bottle of Old Spice or a bar of soap. Some was more direct. She would yell at me and belittle me anytime we stayed at her house. I hid the abuse from my parents, so she was a regular babysitter. When I got older and didn't need a babysitter, I was able to reduce contact. She then switched from direct attacks to spreading lies about me to neighbors and anyone who would listen. When I was 17, I found out she told all our neighbors I was a Satanist. When I got married, a switch flipped and she decided I was now her favorite nephew and acted like we were always best friends and she didn't spend 20+ years abusing me. Well, 25-year-old me didn't fall for it, but I decided to play along. Why? I was cynical and knew how to hold a grudge. She was unmarried, childless, and loaded. So I spent the next 2 decades acting like I could stand to be in the same room with her. I would buy her thoughtful gifts, which were always whatever was on clearance at the religious bookstore. She would go on about how spiritual I was and would shower us with gifts and expensive meals. Her wrath was no longer directed at me, but she doubled the venom spit at my mom. She made it her mission to get me to turn against my mom. She made up ridiculous events that never happened, like my mother trying to smother their mother in her sleep or her repeatedly trying to push her down stairwells. Through all of it, my mom took her abuse, never standing up for herself. It killed her that her sister hated her, but she never stopped trying to rebuild the relationship. Time marched on, and Aunt was diagnosed with a terminal disease. In her final months, she decided to stick the knife in one last time and give it a good twist. She announced she was going no contact with her sister. My mom was devastated. Through 60+ years of abuse, she still loved her sister and wanted to be there to care for her. Aunt denied that and it broke her. I tried to talk her into letting my mom visit her, but she claimed she had to talk to her priest, and he told her my mother didn't deserve forgiveness, and being such a strong Catholic as I was, I should respect that. My mom's only comfort was that her son was there to care for her sister, so I did my duty and was with her almost every day until she passed. In her final days, she was very weak and couldn't really talk. Just whispering 1 or 2 words here or there was all she could manage. Knowing she was powerless to protest, I delivered what would be my second biggest FU to her. I called my mom and told her she was welcome to come and visit whenever she wanted. My mom was elated. She rushed over immediately and returned every day. She would sit there for hours, holding her hand and talking to her sister, so happy to be reunited. My aunt would stare daggers at me while I smiled back. My mom was blissfully unaware that her sister didn't want her there and got to be with her sister during her final days. A huge weight was lifted off her shoulders as they had finally reconciled. I never told my mom that her sister never actually told me she could come, and that secret will go to my grave. On the last day, it was clear she was in her final moments. It was just her and I in the room, so I leaned in close and delivered my farewell message. I spoke loudly and clear to make sure she could hear me. I want you to know I'm an atheist. Her eyes told me she understood, and within a minute, she was gone. I'm not sure if my message pushed her over the edge, but I kind of hope so. Oh, and thanks to her generosity and her will, I'm somehow managing to go on without her. You know, I've read and heard stories of devastating revenge, of crazy revenge, painful, traumatic. I don't know why, but this is one of the stories that strikes me the most. I wouldn't say it's the craziest thing I ever heard, but man, faking this for all those years and then right as they're on their deathbed and they can't say anything, just unleashing all of this stuff on them and kind of making that hospice type situation for them probably not all too comfortable. I guess some would say it couldn't have happened to a nicer person, but man, the story felt extra dark. Abject Movie 4981 commented, "Honestly, you deserve a standing ovation for the way you stood up for your mom and the greatest gift you gave her, even though she will never know. This is the ultimate revenge. You slow cooked and served in a superb way." Our next story is, caused food stealing coworker puke all over himself. Small business, max 10 people were in the office at the same time, so when someone's stealing food from the fridge, people notice it fairly quickly. However, this was the owner's son. Now, the owner was known for nicking food, but he would at least pay you back. Sometimes. His son, about 20 at the time, did not and was also a jerk about it, and most people were getting fed up. So one day, I brought coloring liquid from home, which my wife used to make blue treats, cake, ice cream for our kids. He was always stealing my dairy products and I thought the blue would make it less appealing. Almost forgot about it until a coworker was fuming that someone had eaten almost all of her cottage cheese and that she didn't have enough for herself. So I asked her if she was willing to sacrifice what was left, sprinkled a few blue drops in there, went to the culprit and said, "Dude, were you eating this? It's gone bad, you can't eat this. How did you not notice?" I could hardly finish my sentence as he threw up all over his desk and himself, violently, for all to see. The blue spots and the leftovers I showed him did look rather dramatic. "Dude, not only has the cottage cheese gone bad, it's the worst mold I've ever seen. You just scrounged that up, man. You're a monster." The only problem with this revenge is going forward is everybody's food going to be speckled blue and looking moldy for inexplicably no reason? Do we all just keep and consume moldy food in the fridge now? Fluffy Instance 849 commented, "We found out someone was eating people's food out of the community fridge at work, ordered some wings and added ghost pepper hot sauce to them. Never found out who actually ate them, but the food stealing stopped." Our next story is, she ate it. The setup, back at uni again, a group of us like to dine once a week along the Miracle Mile just off campus. One girl would only order off the appetizer section and then do the, "That looks good, can I have a bite?" routine until she had filled her plate. Everybody got tired of this, but she was otherwise kind and helpful, so we let it ride. The revenge: at one meal, she placed her order last, grabbed her purse, and said she would be right back. Our food was brought while she was gone. By the time she got back, each of us had put something on her plate from our own. She thanked us, and we all started eating. When we were almost through, I nudged the guy next to me and said, "She ate it, pay up." He said, "Later," and we both started laughing. The girl turned pale. "What did you do to my food? What did you put in it? Oh my god, I think I'm gonna be sick." Then she made a quick time to the restroom and did not come out for several minutes. The spoiler: we had done nothing to her food, we only acted like we had. She was upset because her imagination got the better of her. The epilogue: it took a long time to convince her that everything was fine and that we were only pulling a prank. After that, however, she would order her own meals and only mooch off our desserts. We could live with that. This is a great revenge, but the real problem is when you meet the person that gives so few freaks that a revenge like this doesn't work. I was reading a Reddit story the other day from the perspective of somebody who helped themselves all the time to other kids' lunches. To clarify, this is from the perspective of the person that ate other people's food, and they had commented there was one day where the kid sat down in front of them with their food and proceeded to spit and lick on every single element of the plate, get up and go to the restroom. The person commenting said, "I couldn't let them think that they could defeat me with that. They said that they ate every bit of that food still. What do you even do in a situation like that?" Coder Joe 1 commented, "She got her just desserts." Our next story is, didn't have to do a thing. So I didn't exactly do the revenge, it just sort of happened. But it made me happy. I worked for this company as a manager in their accounting department. They paid pretty low, but it was enough for me. They were flexible as I started my business and very supportive. I even catered their event once with my new business during work hours. Eventually it became too time consuming and I had to quit my job to grow my business. My wife had some doctor's appointments scheduled for months in advance, and we were worried about something being cancer on her. Long story short, I got a cold during my 2-week notice, texted my boss that I'd be working from home so as to not infect anyone, and while I was waiting to hear if my wife had cancer while laying sick in bed, my boss texted me to let me know they were letting me go early, like multiple days early. I had to argue with her to allow me back in the building to pick up my things and say goodbye to my teams. The revenge is simple. After I left, they posted my job on Indeed. This was back in July, and guess who still has not found a replacement for their severely underpaid and understaffed department? My ex-boss is currently doing my job and the job of the controller because we quit at the same time. It was pretty wild. So were they just trying to be like especially petty here? Because how is that ever going to be a situation that's going to work out well for them? And plus, I feel like this is one of the cardinal sins of management. You don't fire somebody who's already on their way out with their 2-week notice. Unless it was one of those weird situations where it's like, we'll let you have your 2-week notice and pay you for whatever, but just don't come back in. Either way, I mean, with management like that, a place like this is either operating way too well off of soul-sucking procedures and people who all probably hate their job, or is destined to just straight up fail. Our next story is Manager Was a Crap Factory. This was years ago, but still a very favorite Petty Crocker revenge story. I worked in a huge popular music retail company about 35 years ago. This is important. We had 2 bathrooms, one for the ladies and one for the gentlemen, but our store director only took the biggest, nastiest crap in the ladies, which would stink it up like a fetid dead corpse. It would permeate the entire stockroom. Absolute heck. So one day, opportunity knocked via the delivery of over 100 boxes of CDs, cassettes, and anything you can imagine would stock a music retail store. So while Dennis the crap-stinking menace was in the bathroom, emptying his rotting, vile gut stink, I had the delivery guy stack all 100 boxes in front of that bathroom door, effectively trapping Dennis. He had to sit there for hours. Glorious relief for all of us, and reduced him to a vomiting, sweaty, putrid mess with no relief until he could have sweet relief and escape. He never used our bathroom again. I'm not even sure he ever took a crap again, because it wasn't long after that he left the company. So I almost don't buy this one, and here's why. I apologize for this discussion in advance, but if anybody lays a stink bomb, I think just about anybody can recognize it is rancid. But I think we need to be honest with ourselves on 2 things. 1, when you're still in the bathroom where you've laid the stink bomb, by the time you've washed your hands, you're probably already pretty accustomed to the smell. If anybody's walked out of a bathroom and then back in immediately after, they would know what I'm talking about. But most importantly, do people get grossed out when it originated from themselves? I just feel like most people would be like, yeah, that definitely smells awful, but it doesn't innately bother them if it's from themselves. I just find it hard to believe that somebody could lay a stink bomb, get trapped in there with it, and then be reduced to a vomiting, sweaty, putrid mess. Sponge67 commented, "We had a guy do this where I worked years ago. It was a small machine shop and we had a forklift for shipping out parts. The guy used to laugh at our reactions when we would walk into a toxic disaster. One day I told the boss I was going to get him back, and I backed up the forklift to the washroom door. He was begging and pleading to let him out. I was going to, and the boss stopped me and told me to leave him there till quitting time. We all had a big laugh except for him, but he stopped doing it and would warn us after that." This next story is, my mother kept donating me junk, so I hid 200 ducks in her house. I'm not sure if this is petty revenge or even a revenge due to the outcome, but it started as a way to have some petty revenge to my mother. My mother is notorious for giving me junk. A few examples from the last month: address stamps with my information on them from when I lived at home 15 years ago, a dentist appointment card with appointments from 2006, about 30 keys, just 30 random keys without knowing where they fit on, USB sticks and memory cards ranging from a few megabytes to max 2 gigabyte. I love my mother, and I know she doesn't mean this in a bad way, but I've told her to stop it so many times to no avail. When my father was alive, it wasn't as bad, but now I really have to be careful when I or my wife go over, or we get another box of junk to take home. She is still cleaning up the house since the death, so I understand from where it all comes. But some things are clearly meant for the bin instead of donating it to me. But last month, I had really had enough and bought 200 plastic ducks online. When she was on holiday recently, I planned to take my revenge and hid them all over her house. And by everywhere, I really mean everywhere. Some are very visible, like in the middle of the hall, in her washing machine, or on the photo frames. But most are really hidden in places where she won't look directly, like in sculptures, between the roots of her plants, between 2 coffee cups, in the pockets of her clean trousers, between her clean folded sheets, on top of the shower head. Basically, in every nook and cranny of the house I could find. They are always hidden at height because she regularly babysits our toddler and I don't want him to swallow them. You would think that 200 ducks is a lot, but I recently ordered a new bag because there are so many places I can still hide some. The revenge part has failed a bit because she loves it. Every time she finds one, she's laughing and we get a photo of the found duck. Edit, the giving junk thing has been going on ever since I left my parents' house, so around 15 years, long before the death of my dad last year. And yes, I've tried everything, from refusing it to accepting and throwing away in her bin. It just doesn't click for her that if she finds something, it doesn't mean that I can use it. She had told me a few times that it is junk she's giving me. The current situation is that if I don't accept it, she stores it for later, read next visit, or she takes it with her when she comes over for a visit. Edit 2. So many people add stuff to my story and think my mother is senile. a hoarder, or has problems throwing things away, but it's not like that at all, and I don't want people to think that of my mom. She is way too kind for that. My mother is a healthy 64 years young, independent woman, capable of throwing away stuff. She's cleaned up a lot of stuff my dad collected over the years, like books, magazines, clothes, and everything that my dad bought double, which we only found out after his passing. Everything without real sentimental value or 0% usefulness has been thrown in the bin by her. The problem is with stuff that is between 5 and 1% usefulness, like a commenter said. Not the sentimental stuff, we went through that last year after my dad died. But things that are virtually useless and in most cases are. Things like appointment cards from 2006, 30 random keys, vacuum bags while she knows we have a Dyson because she bought one herself because she likes our Dyson so much. Dried out paint bins, those plastic pots you get when you buy new plants, to name a few others. Things most people know are junk, but she somehow thinks are useful for me. She even said sometimes that it's junk, but might be useful for me. Stuff that, when I point it out, she knows is stupid to give me, like that appointment card from 2006. And yes, we are helping with clearing the house whenever we can, and she wants our help obviously. But this is the Petty Revenge Reddit, not the look at me helping my mom Reddit. So I like to keep the story relevant to the revenge part. Now, I definitely think I would feel differently if it was a repeated occurrence and I can expect it every single time, and it becomes an exercise of just accepting that when you go over there or she comes over, you're gonna have another thing just to throw on top of the trash heap. But I just think if it were me and my mom was like, here's a bunch of stuff I found that you might be able to use, I would be thinking inwardly to myself, that is absolutely freaking adorable. I can't use any of this crap. You know it's ready to go in the great trash bin in the sky when you can't even list it on like Facebook Marketplace because you just wouldn't get enough money for it. Lindsay Zaz commented, our rule in the family is whenever mom gives you something, take it and say thanks. Then check with the other siblings if it's not just crap. Hey, anybody want Uncle George's army mess kit? Nope. Trash it. This means less junket moms later for us to clear out. She's happy we took it. Everybody wins. 404 user NKT Found commented, this is my husband's and my policy with his parents too. Sometimes the things they give us are usable, in which case we keep them if it's something we need, or donate them to a thrift store. It did help to eliminate a few things when we moved mother-in-law out of the house after father-in-law died. I ended up being the primary help to pack mother-in-law up to move, and I did a lot of similar things then. There was a large pile earmarked as donate or garage sale that actually was all pitched once mother-in-law was in her new apartment. It was all useless or very worn out junk, absolutely not worth the time or effort to try to sell or to burden a thrift store with. Our next story is punished for speeding? Enjoy your long hours drive. This happened in the 90s. I was in the army, 18 years old. I was assigned to bring the army staff with a military jeep in the morning. I was reported for speeding and my commanding officer punished me with 10 days extension of my army service and also 10 days not allowed to go home. I was assigned as a standby driver during the night. Around 7, I had a call that I needed to go pick up my commanding officer and take him to different outposts to check that the guards were doing their job properly. Army vehicles have a speed limit of 35 kilometers in the city. Since I was punished in the morning for speeding, I swore that I would keep this speed limit no matter what. It took us 3.5 hours to make a 1-hour trip. I could see him tapping his fingers nervously on the dashboard and mumbling incoherent, angry words, but there was nothing he could do about it. He never spoke to me again after that. Now, I don't know where this takes place. OP mentioned kilometers in the city. And I don't know if I'm just ignorant and it would even work similarly in US places, but hearing somebody say, I was reported for speeding, they punished me with a 10-day extension of my army service and also 10 days not being allowed to go home, sounded like particularly weird and, putting it politely, very forceful. Don't do anything wrong or we may never let you go. Morebrim commented, you did not mention the country, but since you mentioned kilometers per hour, I'm assuming not the US military. In the US military, I don't think a commanding officer has the authority to extend your enlistment commitment. Satinai Nuseri commented, according to his posting history, OP is from Greece. I don't know how things worked in Greece in the 1990s, but I do know that they had and still have conscription where every man, with some exceptions, is required to do 9 or 12 months service in the military. I'm from a country that also has a mandatory military service, Finland, and I did my service in the 1990s. For me, things could not have happened like OP writes. But as I already wrote, I don't know the details of Greek laws. There are a few ways how a conscript can be punished here. The simplest one is prohibition to leave the base. This basically means that you lose your weekend and evening leaves and can't take other leaves during the period. I think this is the same thing that OP has with the not allowed to go home. The law has changed since I served, but if I remember correctly back then, a company commander could order up to 14 days of leave prohibition and a battalion commander or higher officer up to 30 days. So this part of his punishment would have been possible here. However, the prohibition to leave the base does nothing to service length here. The clock runs down the same no matter if you have it or not. Another form of punishment is military jail. Nowadays, you always need a conviction from court-martial to go to military jail, but it used to be so that a commanding officer could order that himself. I can't remember what the limits were when I served, but in the 1920s, it was so that a company commander could order up to 1 week, and a battalion commander up to 2 weeks, and higher amounts needed court-martial. My grandfather got a full 14 days for being drunk in service. I don't know the details, but he served during Prohibition. The limits in the 90s were definitely not higher than that. Then and now, the first 10 days that you're in jail count towards your military service. But then the clock stops and the rest of the days don't count. So if you're in jail for 14 days, your total military service extends by 4 days. So before the court-martial became mandatory for all military jail sentences, a battalion commander could extend someone's military service by throwing them to jail. It is possible that Greece has a rule that's something like this, but I will be very surprised if so light level of punishment extends the service. Somehow I feel that reported for speeding is not telling the whole issue. This next story is yelled at a pedestrian in a crosswalk, so now you park further away. This weekend, I was at a shopping center. I had just left one of the stores and was walking to my car when I heard this lady yelling at a pedestrian in a crosswalk. "You have to look before you cross. You can't just walk out into the road. Some people like you just don't care. You are so stupid." Couple of things to note. This is the crosswalk that goes from the parking lot into the main entrance of the grocery store. People cross there all the time and cars have to watch and wait. The driver did have a point since some drivers in the area don't care and people have been hit on the main roads, but there was no need to yell like that. I told the driver it was a crosswalk and they had to stop, and I said thank goodness you did pay attention and stopped. She then yelled at me that the lady must look before crossing. Since this was a Saturday morning, the prime spots were taken, but I was lucky to get one earlier. As I approached my car to drop off my stuff, guess who wanted my spot? The same driver. I opened my door, put my groceries in, and all of a sudden decided that I wanted to go look at some more stores. I shook my head at her. She yelled at me, "You did that on purpose, you twit." I shrugged my shoulders and walked away. Guess she should have just kept her mouth shut. Maybe it's different if it's somebody that you just, in general, don't actually feel that concerned about. But in this day and age, when it comes to people who are yelling about things that you think are complete nonsense and driving multi-ton vehicles, and also if it does take place in the US where, hey, we got the Second Amendment, I begin to wonder when I hear stories like this if it's even worth it trying to argue and yell at somebody like that. McDre2 commented, "The driver could be actually correct. Pedestrians have the right of way only if they're already in the crosswalk. They don't just get to step out into traffic and expect cars to stop for them. The sense of entitlement some people have extends to them thinking that they can step in front of an oncoming car and not be at fault." Dumbname25644 commented, "As someone that walks a lot, I will never ever cross the road unless either A, there is not a car to be seen anywhere, or B, I'm at a pedestrian crossing and cars going both ways have come to a complete stop. If one side comes to a stop and the other side does not, I will wave the good driver on. Here in Australia, while it is law to stop for pedestrians, I have noted that most drivers will not stop for a pedestrian at a crossing unless the pedestrian is already in the middle of the crossing." Our next story is not my finest moment, but funny as heck. Back when I was in my mid-20s, I bought my first place to live. Nothing great, it was just a trailer house, but it was mine. My neighbors were okay for the first few months. Then one day I was hearing banging on my walls. The kids on one side were using my outside wall to constantly bounce tennis balls off. It drove me nuts. Talked to the neighbor. They said, "Kids will be kids," and didn't put a stop to it. I decided it's time to do something after a few days and got a set of extremely loud air horns like they use on trains and semi-trucks. Put them under the skirting. The next time the kid started, I hooked up the air hose from my air compressor and opened the valve. The kids screamed and ran crying. I was crying from laughing so hard. The parents were ticked and came over, making threats and yelling at me. The second petty revenge I got was one night I'd hit a wireless battery-powered doorbell under their stairs and I'd randomly push the button to ring it. Their dogs would go crazy, barking and running around. I changed the batteries in that thing about a dozen times. I used it so much. You know, it happens one time, 2 times, it's fun and innocent. You call them out and hopefully they adjust and go, you know what, maybe we shouldn't be banging our tennis balls off the side of this neighbor's house. But evidently not here. It's probably too innocent that the cops probably aren't going to help you unless there's literal damage being shown. So it's like, what can you do? You gotta do something. Alcia Summer commented, yeah, kids will be kids is appropriate when a toddler's upset their juice isn't in the yellow cup instead of the orange. Or a preschooler wants to wear rain boots, shorts, and a stained sweater and it's 98 degrees outside. Or a teenage kid feels like it's the end of the world and wants to stay home from school because they woke up with acne on their face and it's picture day. It's never a good excuse for parents deciding to not parent. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another awesome revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.